So, but when that came out, it was kind of at this time where it was refreshing to just have a kind of the show about like kind-hearted people, and there was still conflict in a sense, but it wasn't just a show about crummy people or people trying to take down the rich or something. It wasn't based around negativity. And so I think part of the reason Project Hail Mary is doing so well is because it was uplifting in a way.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Cup of Tea Critiques podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Chaselin, and like always, I'll be joined by the team that brings you cupofteacritiques.com. If you haven't already, make sure you like and subscribe to our podcast so you can stay in the loop on all things COTC and figure out your cup of tea. Ready for a deep look with the deep brew? This week's topic, space movies. Cup of Tea Critiques is a family affair, and I'm here with my brother Chris, my mother Reba, and my father Terry.
Yeah, Project Hail Mary was a huge success. And I say huge success. I haven't looked at the financials, but it has an IMDb rating of 8.4. The audience ratings and critic ratings for Rotten Tomatoes are pretty high as well. Yeah, 96%, 95%. Okay. So Project Hail Mary was quite successful. And then we had the recent launch of Artemis II, which is going around the moon and back, testing the systems on that rocket to see if they're ready to push the program into deep space. Given that these two events come close together, I thought it'd be a good idea for us to maybe talk about the appeal of space movies. For several things. One, I think it's very interesting that these movies cross genres. Another is I wonder just how tethered they are or what they should be to reality. The most enjoyable space movie I've seen would be Pitch Black. And that would be because it scared the heck out of me, for one, which I think, in my view, is an effective space movie in the horror genre anyway. The other is they did a very good job of hiding what the creatures looked like. So you stayed scared almost the whole time. And then when they suddenly shine a light and you see just for a moment what they looked like and how big they were, it was just incredibly frightening. I thought they shot that movie so well. I typically don't like scary movies, but Pitch Black has to be, one of the best space movies I've ever seen. The most boring space movie I've seen is Contact. And it's a shame to say that because Jodie Foster is just an amazing actress. But first of all, it didn't have a lot of actors in it. Secondly, for the most part, it consisted of her listening for life in outer space in an isolated area. It was just an incredibly dry movie. And I can't imagine them doing that with someone who was not an A-list actor. And she's pretty much been A-list since she was 12. But I can't imagine someone who is not an A-list actor even getting that movie out of the studio. I just can't imagine that. But Contact was probably the most boring one I've seen.
Talk to me, guys.
Partially polarized set of moving pulses, amplitude modulated.
We're locked. Systems check out, signal across the board. What's the frequency?
4.4623 gigahertz. Hydrogen times pi. Told you.
Strong sucker, too.
I got it. I'm patched in.
All right, let me hear it. Listen to that. Make me a liar fish.
What were some of you guys' favorites?
Yeah, I mean, I saw Project Hail Mary and I really liked it. What was particularly appealing about that, I think, obviously Ryan Gosling did a really good job, but also I think it was largely just a story about friendship in a sense. Like it was, the bond that formed between himself and this other being, that he encounters in space. It almost had a little bit of an effect of like when, I don't know if you all watched Ted Lasso, but when that came out, it was kind of at this time where it was refreshing to just have a kind of the show about like kind-hearted people. And there was still conflict in a sense, but it wasn't just a show about crummy people or people trying to take down the rich or something. It wasn't based around negativity. And so I think part of the reason Project Hail Mary is doing so well is because it was uplifting in a way, and and it did have good visuals. I think my favorite kind of space movies, honestly, are probably horror / action. I think of the two that come to mind are, I should really say three. Alien, well, the Alien franchise in general, I'll count that as one.
Made up. No, man. I don't want to talk about what it's made up. I'm eating this. What's the matter? The food ain't that bad, baby. Eat your patrol.
What?
Pitch Black and Total Recall. Total Recall is the other one. So those are the three that kind of popped to my mind. They're all kind of, I don't think Total Recall was really horror, but it was more action. But the other two I would call horror / action, if you want to call it a cross between those. But that's typically my flavor. But Project Hail Mary, so I guess it's a little different, but it was a good movie.
It's not so much movie that comes to mind, but Star Trek and watching the Star Trek series. The interesting thing about Star Trek and space for me was it presented a lot of the same trials, tribulations, impediments that are on Earth in terms of relationships. They translated that to, other beings, other planets. So things that we struggle with here in terms of, getting along and, you name it. Star Trek kind of took that from Earth and propagated it throughout space. No place is perfect. A lot of space movies pitch aliens as these people that are more advanced than people on Earth. And Star Trek kind of took it to, they're just people. They're just different kinds of people in different places. And so I thought that was pretty interesting. And one reason that I kind of followed Star Trek, I was kind of a bit of a nerd, I guess, in that respect. But that part was fun to me, how a lot of the issues and things that we deal with here were similar, or they tried to portray it as being universal.
Interesting.
So I'll start with the opposite end to answer your question. You said the most boring one was Contact, and as I've already said, I didn't watch a lot of a space movie. So when I think of the most boring one, it's got to be Star Wars Episode 2: Attack of the Clones. Yes, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that will agree with me that if you literally take a 3-year-long nap, you will be more entertained than Episode 2 was. It was, for me, Mom, it was my lost world. Okay? You couldn't stand that, and I feel like Attack of the Clones was one of those that I'm still waiting on my rebate check from that. Whatever, something. It was trash with a capital TRASH and 3 exclamation points. It was horrible and beyond boring. But another one that I found boring was that I know it was a good movie, but was boring was The Day the Earth Stood Still. I mean, it took until we got to the end and go, oh, so that was the point of the last 2 hours.
The original or the remake?
The remake is the one that I saw.
Okay.
In terms of my favorite space movie, again, acknowledging that I haven't watched as many, so I'm going to go with the new Star Trek series, particularly the first movie out of that trilogy. For me, it connected me to the series that was extremely popular that I didn't really watch much. I used to watch some of the Star Trek episodes because they would follow the Cubs games on WGN sometimes, so that was my introduction, but I had already watched a 3-hour-long game, so sometimes I felt like I'd been sitting there too long to watch the old ones. But the movie itself I thought was entertaining, but I really enjoyed the way that the actors played off of each other. One thing I will give the creators of the new movie is that they knew everybody's big favorite character was Spock. And so who was going to get the most criticism and ridicule but the new Spock? And so I thought they did an excellent job of making sure to mix the old with the new there so as to kind of take some of that burden off of Zachary Quinto to live up to that measure. So they by including the television actor Leonard Nimoy, they did a good job of letting his version of the character stand alone and not have to live up to what was the last guy like, and can you even nearly match it? So I'd call the first Star Trek of the new trilogy the best.
In your travels, did you ever encounter a man named Khan?
As you know, I have made a vow never to give you information that could potentially alter your destiny. Your path is yours to walk, and yours alone. That being said, Khan Noonien Singh is the most dangerous adversary the Enterprise ever faced. He is brilliant, ruthless, and he will not hesitate to kill every single one of you.
You know, the franchises didn't really do it for me. I like Star Wars enough to keep seeing the new ones for a while. Now I'm just out. I'm just out on this. I mean, it's just overkill to me at this point, personally. But I think, I mean, the ones I mentioned earlier, Pitch Black and Alien, and I think I gravitate towards the horror and action stuff because it's a little, I just think it's a little simpler. Like a lot of space movies, I feel like there's all this kind of setup and all this kind of backstory, and it just becomes a little maybe overwhelming or tiring a little bit. So I mean, I think what I liked about Gravity was that it kind of got straight to the point. I felt like that was like as condensed of a story, I thought, as you know, it was more condensed, I think, than you usually see with the space movies.
Houston, this is Mission Specialist Ryan Stone. I am off structure and I'm drifting. Do you copy? Anyone?
But I think just having a movie where it's like there are these creatures attacking us, like it's very simple and easy to to comprehend what you're seeing, and there's not so much to remember, I guess, to it. And so and also, I mean, a lot of the problems, you know, in a space movie, it's like, is this problem really going to get solved? If it's a creature attacking you and you need to kill the creature, that's simple enough. But if you know, when it's a kind of an environmentalist kind of a thing, it's like, all right, well, even if you survive, it's for how long? You know, it's like, well, the sun's still burning out. So,
yeah.
So I think, you know, the ones I mentioned earlier, Pitch Black, Alien, I think I mentioned another one. Oh, Total Recall. And then one that's not, I mean, obviously, like I said, I like Project Hail Mary, but another one is Wall-E, was a non-action one that I liked. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have to say one other thing that I did like that was space-oriented was both the short-lived series Firefly and the movie Serenity. They were really fun.
They were.
I like those two.
I almost mentioned those for the sentimental value, Dad. Like, I really enjoyed watching. You and I would go up to the cabin, and that's how we would watch the series. And then we went ahead and watched Serenity. So, like, it's among my favorites for that nostalgic reason. I won't pretend like it's the best compared to some of the others, which is why I didn't mention it. But personally, it has a special closeness in my heart.
Well, that had great casting, too.
It did.
It did.
Very well cast.
And then,
now, this is all the money Niska gave us in advance. You bring it back to him, tell him the job didn't work out. We're not thieves. But we are thieves. Point is, we're not taking what's his. Now, we'll stay out of his way as best we can from here on in. You explain that's best for everyone, okay?
Keep the money. Use it to buy a funeral. It doesn't matter where you go or how far you fly. I will hunt you down. And the last thing you see will be my blade. Dark.
Now, this is all the money Niska gave us in advance.
I'm good. Let's speak for everyone. I'm right there with you.
And then another one for me for sentimental reasons is, and to bring this piece into the conversation, or this idea into the conversation, is Alio. It came out last year. It was a cartoon space movie for kids, and it dealt with a kid wanting to get off world and because he didn't feel like he belonged, and he got to space and got to meet some aliens, that kind of stuff. And so that was a very fun movie for kids. I got to take Belle to that one, and she really enjoyed it. So like that for me was really fun because I did spend some times there were a few scenes where I wasn't really looking at the screen. I was just kind of watching her take it in. And I really just kind of enjoyed watching her, like the smile that show gave to her. So that's another one that, sentimentally speaking, I'd always put up there.
The one last thing I'll add is that one of my favorite movies that dealt with space in general, but really, I don't know if you'd call it a space movie or not, was Hidden Figures. It was on the periphery of the space program. Right. And that, I really enjoyed that one. I really liked.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Dad.
No, I was just going to say I liked what it educated me on in terms of the history of the what they call computers, and the advent of the actual physical computers, as opposed to people, and how, interestingly enough, the people that were computers took up the mantle of learning this new thing. They didn't approach it as a fear of their jobs or anything. They actually saw it as a tool, and how they worked to kind of master that. But the whole story on the periphery of the space program, I thought was really good.
Is it a space movie? Because nothing. No, I'm serious. Like that's the perfect movie for that question. Is that a space movie or is it just a drama?
Yeah, see, I didn't view that as a space movie at all.
Me neither.
Yeah, no, I didn't either, but it's dealing with space.
So, which is why I never mentioned it at all. Even when I read any articles, like, it doesn't fit. So, there doesn't seem to be any space for comedies in space movies. You guys suggest that there is. So you talked about Serenity.
Firefly is a series. But
Firefly is a series. I didn't see those, but Brandon described them as fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And which suggests to me that there must have been some humor in those, correct?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There was. I mean, there was some action, some drama, but I think the biggest piece was just they were quirky personalities all on the ship. All of them had their idiosyncrasies that just were funny to watch, try and connect and exist together in that space. So it made for a lot of funny moments.
I would still categorize it as action, though. I feel like it was a funny action. I mean, you could say action comedy. The stories were based around action, I thought. Action mystery a little bit. Right. Like, I don't think of it like
adventure is kind of what they
comedy,
categorize it as.
Yeah. I feel like it fit in a few different categories, but like I feel comedy is definitely a piece of the description for it. It was fun.
Space movies can cross genres, and I was just thinking I can't think of a space movie that would fit squarely in comedy.
I love that you said that because I was about to bring up when space movies cross genres, but specifically when it goes wrong. And I want to call this out because my cousin talked about this. When I went to visit them back when I was in college, I went out to LA to go visit our cousin, and Mom, I won't repeat the stuff that my cousin said, but Jason X is when they took that horror franchise and stuck it in space. And I will just succinctly say that it was bad. And I have literally not come across a person, like my cousin said the most about it, but I have not come across a person that has told me that Jason X was in any way, shape, form, or fashion a good idea, let alone a good movie. And so I wonder about crossing things over like that because some things need to be left alone, I think.
Spaceballs is a comedy that.
True. Yep.
About, yeah.
Oh, that's so much fun too. That one is so much fun. There's another one that I would say was a bit of a comedy, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And that one was with Mos Def. It was a lot of adventure, but it was a whole lot of comedy. It was really good.
And there's what was it? My Favorite Martian. I forgot about that one. I used to like that.
The series?
Yeah.
Or the movie?
I meant the movie. I
Sorry.
forgot there was a series, but I meant the
Yeah,
movie with I think it was Jeff Bridges was in it. Maybe Jeff Bridges and Christopher Lloyd, I think. And then I never saw it, but Mars Attacks, I think, was another one.
Chris, you put together a crossword puzzle this past week on Project Hail Mary, which I thought was really cool. That's on the Cup of Tea Critique site. And it occurred to me that I don't think we do a lot of space movies, and I wonder if it's because of the expense of those kinds of productions. They don't necessarily have large casts, but I imagine the sets.
That's what I'm thinking.
Are pretty sophisticated.
Yeah.
I imagine. I don't know. I can't remember if it was covered in the materials, but I don't feel like you can CG a lot of what's going on in space. Whereas in a Marvel movie, you can make half their costumes, CGI and all that kind of stuff that's going on. Like these settings, I imagine, have to be more realistic. They have to physically get into an asteroid or on Mars. And so to your point, Mom, maybe they cost a lot more to put together than does something else that's covered space like a Star Trek or Star Wars.
I think a lot of times it comes down to the cast you have to get. I feel like when I think about space movies, I feel like a lot of them do tend to have A-list or very popular actors, and that I feel like when we talk about the budgets of movies, the effects are the effects, but who's the actors? They're obviously a good portion of whatever the budget is. So, I'm just trying to think through the movie. I mean, obviously Ryan Gosling demands a lot. Armageddon had A-listers in it. Apollo 13 had Tom Hanks.
Apollo 13, yes. Yes. Alien.
Yes.
Independence Day, Contact, yeah.
I feel like when you're doing a movie that's that grand scale where you're already putting, so much money into the effects of it all, then you don't necessarily want relatively anonymous actors in those roles, even if they're talented enough. Are they going to draw people out? So that you're having this added expense of, well, we gotta get somebody who's a draw to be in this movie as well. So now the budget's going to be higher, plus the effects, and so I feel like maybe that's probably why we don't see even more of them, is because it is you're compounding the budget, to try to make sure that the movie does have some box office success.
Yeah, I mean, imagine making Avatar without A-list actors.
True.
I mean, I can't, even with paint and everything. I mean, with the costuming and everything, I just don't see it flying.
I'm disagreeing with that whole notion because I think these people a lot of them became A-list actors. The Star Wars franchise, who the hell was the guy playing Luke Skywalker? I mean, those things, Star Wars, Alien. Sigourney Weaver, those were very early days for her.
Okay, but here I'm gonna counter your perspective with this. That was back when movies were just getting more started with sci-fi and CGI and all that kind of stuff. And so maybe back in the day, yes, those weren't A-listers, but I feel like going back to say Armageddon on forward, I can't recall most of these productions not having A-list actors. I mean, Apollo 13 was Tom Hanks. You trying to tell me he wasn't an A-lister by that point? And then there was the other one with Sandra Bullock. Was that Gravity? I think it was.
Gravity.
Yeah. So she was definitely a known commodity at that point. So my point to you, Dad, is just that yes, maybe in the past that was the case where they weren't A-listers and these helped bring out their star power. But in the last 30 years, I feel like it's been the other way around.
We also have to draw distinctions between certain space movies and franchises, I guess, because I feel like when you talk about something like Star Wars, Star Trek, even Alien, at some point, it's the franchise or the characters within the franchise themselves are the star more so than the actors, even. And that they kind of say the same thing about Marvel movies. It's like it's less about the actor and more about the people are going to see, Ant-Man or whoever the hell it is. But you know what I mean? Like for certain franchises, it's less about who is actually playing the role and more about the character itself or the universe itself. And the other thing is, I think there could be A-list directors too, because I think Avatar is partly James Cameron. Alien, Ridley Scott and James Cameron.
Mm.
So I think the director can help get it made too, because somebody with deep pockets or a reputation for making large budget films with box office success, or they throw a little bit of their own money in to get it done. So I think there's those two components as well.
I want to on another podcast. I would love to have that debate about the actors versus the IP being the appeal or reason for a franchise success. But I won't do that in this one. What I will ask though, everybody, is: do we see a separation between space movie and alien movie? Because I feel like we've lumped them all into space, but to me, Independence Day isn't a space movie because aliens invaded Earth. We didn't really go out there and fight them. It was all here on Earth. And so that's why I'm curious if we are seeing a distinction between aliens versus space, or if really, as long as aliens are involved, we do put it in that same category.
One of the things that I found interesting was one of the links that you sent us to review some of the materials, talking about space movies and the like, was that they categorized some things. And I had kind of entertained that thought that they fall into certain categories or whatnot. And they had a small, informal classification system of space movies. And they talked about classic ones, which were things like 2001, Space Odyssey. And then action fantasy, which, we can all relate to, things like Alien, Avatar, and the like. Historical ones like the Apollo 13 or that. And then the ones that really aren't space, but space coming to us, the alien invasion type movies. And then their last category was kind of things that are more current movies. They feel felt into pseudo-realistic, I guess, like Project Hail Mary, themes that are kind of not that far-fetched, but something that could possibly happen in the near future. And so alien invasion was one of those that was the other way around. Rather than people going in or interacting in space, it was space coming to us, so to speak. So Independence Day and the like would fall into that category, I would imagine.
I would still put them all into the larger category of space movies. And the reason I do that is because, we abbreviated space aliens to aliens. So yeah, it's
okay. That's a fair way of putting it, because I was going to bring up like The Day the Earth Stood Still and War of the Worlds, neither of which really spent much time out in outer space. However, those were aliens that came into Earth's atmosphere, like
space aliens
that were on Earth. So, are they space aliens or are they Earth invaders?
They're synonymous, honey.
I guess. I guess for myself, I'm looking at it as there's a separation because of setting. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say, is that for me, a space movie has something to do with the setting. So it has to take place off planet in order for me to put it in that category.
Another good one actually is Attack the Block. So I recommend that because I think you guys would like that one. Attack the Block. It's John Boyega. It was like his first big movie that came out. Yeah, it's back to the question of space or not. It doesn't occur in space. It's space. I mean, it's essentially an alien invasion in the hood, basically, but it's adventurous. So that's one I had to throw in too.
The stuff that we read, I found interesting was they were talking about space movies going all the way back to 1902. So like they credited the first space movie, A Trip to the Moon. Mm-hmm. That's pretty far back.
Yeah, probably used cardboard or something.
Yeah, I was trying to think of what the sets and everything would look like way back then, trying to put together a space production. One other thing that in the stuff that we were reading, they talked about the future of space movies, and with current and upcoming technology, they talked about moving into immersion, where like what Avatar pretty much tried to do. That's the beginning of people feeling immersed in those guys. And then the other is interaction, where you actually interact with the whatever it is, sort of like in an augmented or VR way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm ready for stuff like that.
I'm not, but the whole time that I was reading that section too, Dad, I thought, and it kind of is implied in the name, I think a little bit, but I think Cosm is going to be a great setting for something like these types of space movies. I think it'd be perfect for those types. So I'm curious how they will try and do that in the future.
And my first thought when you pitched this topic, Mom, was just that space movies are, the kind of thing that, a theater experience can really enhance. It's provided that it's, well funded enough and, the visuals are good enough. And so when I think about, I think one of the articles said, it's kind of the ultimate escapism, which is, the main reason people go to the movies in the first place. And so, yeah, I think, my first thought is I'm not a huge fan of space movies, but Project Hail Mary is the perfect kind of movie that would propel you to go back to the theater, basically, because it is. I saw it on a Screen X screen, and so there were kind of at certain points in the movie there were visuals kind of on the side, walls, so they extend the screen out.
We did an episode on technology, maybe about 3-4 months ago. We did an episode on the different types of technology used in cinema. And we talked about 4D, IMAX, and all of that stuff. And it does seem like some of those more advanced technologies are perfect to try to deliver the kinds of experiences that space movies try to deliver today. Yeah. And so, it makes all the sense in the world to do that. What's interesting is we have yet to see a whole lot of space movies released. That's the disconnect I don't get right now. So I wonder what is it that probably gets in the way of studios delivering space movies, and it's got to be cost, I would imagine. I mean, Project Hail Mary is probably your first space movie we've heard of in probably a decade. I can't think of any, but anyway.
I guess the takeaway overall is like your taste in space movies is likely to resemble your taste in, genres in general. And with the exception of stuff that's really well done, that, like you said, Pitch Black, that might, make you.
Stay there! Stay down, Shasta! Just stay down!
You might enjoy something that's usually outside of your typical taste.
Mm-hmm.
Jules, yeah, Jules.
Yeah, Jules, yeah.
Yeah, that was a good movie. And
your review was really good. I was really engrossed in your review. I still remember. It was good. Yeah, you gave it chamomile and jasmine.
Yeah, that was a good one too.
Thanks so much for listening to the Cup of Tea Critiques podcast. Honestly, we could go on and on like we do at our dinner table, but we appreciate you figuring out your cup of tea along with us. Make sure you rate and follow us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Also, leave a comment telling us some of your favorite space movies. You can stay in the loop on all things COTC by subscribing on our website at cupofteacritiques.com. You can also find us on Facebook, check out our Instagram at Cup of Tea Critiques, and on Letterboxd at COT Critiques. For Reba, Terry, and Chris, I'm Brandon. We'll see you next time for another Deep Look with a Deep Look.